All right, so if you've ever wanted to know what it's like to own an N54, then this video is for you. I'm going to be going through the good, the bad, and the ugly, end to end, from when I bought the car to what it looks like now, DCT swap, all the major breakdowns, not every little thing, but mostly every single thing that happened to the car, good or bad, or cosmetic wise, I'll be going through it in this video. All right, so it's been a little over 2 years since I bought the car. I paid around 11,000 for it. Definitely overpaid at the time, but it was a 2008 335i E90 with 128,000 miles. Here's what the car looks like now. Here's what the car looked like when I first bought it. As you can see, huge transformation there. So when I bought the car, it was basically completely stock, minus a couple bolt-on mods, but other than that, completely stock, no upgraded turbos, no nothing like that. And cold air intakes, but that was about it. The very first day I bought the car, it broke down. I went to buy the car 45 minutes away, and so did the whole transaction. Then I drove it home 45 minutes, and we were messing around, did a pull, and then at red light, the car starts smoking, or the coolant starts. You can smell coolant. The smoke, the steam was coming out. You can smell it. So we decided to pull over, and here's where you can see the car just with coolant all over the engine bay. So we end up pulling over, couldn't figure out what it was, on the side of the road. End up calling a tow truck and taking it to my buddy's shop to diagnose it. Got the car fixed, coolant hoses, did a compression test, everything checked out. So it was a pretty clean car overall. But then a couple weeks later, bam. So one of the pre-purchase inspection items was doing the diff bushings. So I went to take it to a different shop, and this is how I got the car pulling out of the parking lot. Now I ended up taking it to the shop based on a recommendation, and that's a whole nother story. But ultimately what happened was the turbos were blown. I took it back to my other buddy's shop. They checked it out, blown seal. They helped me with getting stock turbos back on my car, and I was back on the road. So that was like probably a good $3,000 job right there. Here's also how that first shop installed the diff bushing. Here's also the very first upgrade on the car. Gotta always remember that first upgrade. And the second thing that went wrong on the car was the clock spring. Something with the turn signal, I think double blinking turn signal or something. Had that fixed through my buddy's shop as well. Now I know what you're thinking, maintenance before mods, but I just had to get rid of these wheels. Of course, being a new BMW owner, you know I had to go Apex. And of course, after getting new wheels, I run into another issue that my splash guard somehow got trapped underneath my wheel while turning into some driveway. That's that picture. All right, so here's where I start to think more about maintenance before mods, and I go with a 1,000 horsepower intercooler and a upgraded aluminum radiator. As you can see, I was installing it here, and of course, while I'm installing that, I think I bumped the Mickey Mouse flange, and it comes and disintegrates apart. Basically, during the pre-purchase inspection, they told me that I needed a new reservoir because there was fluid on the outside of the cap. Turns out this is relatively normal. That's why there's a hole in the top of the cap. However, my situation was a little bit different. It was not just the reservoir. The system was just continuously spewing out power steering fluid, like shooting it out of the inlet pipe. And I started to diagnose this, and I ended up thinking it was the power steering pump. Turned out changing the power steering pump didn't do anything, and essentially I had to take it back to my buddy's shop. They figured out it was steering rack valve. The valves were stuck open, causing it to continuously shoot fluid out through the reservoir. All right, next thing that happened was the alternator went bad. First thing I tried was the voltage regulator fix. However, that did not work. As you can see, the alternator was in pretty bad shape. This was due to the oil filter housing gasket leaking oil all over the alternator. This is pretty common with these cars. If you don't fix the oil filter housing gasket or any of those gaskets around the oil filter, it's going to leak on the alternator, and it's going to break your alternator. This happened to two of my cars. The next couple clips are my buddy convincing me to get a motor off of Facebook. Obviously, having a spare motor with an N54, of course, you're probably going to need one with these cars. However, this motor had a bunch of upgrades for the car, so I was pretty interested. We spent like 8 hours getting this motor and trans out of this car. All right, so I ended up getting the motor back to my house, and immediately, I think, swapped the coil packs, injectors. I think I had to put a index 12 on my engine because there was one of them that wasn't index 12. Put that on, spark plugs, valve cover, all went on the car immediately. I don't think I have any pictures of that, but that's what I put on. After that, I wanted to go faster, so I got throttle body injection for my throttle body. Put that on the car here. I think I put that on the night before a meet, and I went to go. I thought everything was good. I think I even test drove it like down the block. Came back, woke up really early, started going to the meet, and then bam, I started spewing fuel everywhere under my car. And here's that next tow truck. Okay, so at this point, I'm pretty comfortable with working on the car. And at this stage of the game, I decided I am only working on my car myself. And here's where I grab these 19T turbos off of that engine. And I went to work and put those on myself. But as you can guess, this is not without issues, and the turbos started leaking. I think I stripped a bolt on the oil feed lines for the turbo, and one of these clips is the oil just spewing everywhere down the lines. But I didn't stop there. I got new 19Ts and decided, I'm gonna do it right. I put 19Ts back on the car. That's where the car sits today, and they're still running strong. Okay, next issue. Right after I got done installing the 19Ts, my top hat was so old that the bushing that goes around it, and it spins around in there, that completely broke off. And there I was left after installing the 19Ts with another issue to get my car back on the road. Again, ended up fixing this myself, so not too bad. I learned a lot about this, the strut towers, the front suspension. So yeah, that was a pain in the ass, honestly. After doing the turbo job, I was not happy about that. But that's how old the suspension components were on my car. All right, so after doing all that, I finally felt pretty good about the car, and I went with another cosmetic upgrade. I wanted to really upgrade the taillights. I feel like that would kind of modernize the car. And so I really like the M4 headlights, so I felt like that was a good upgrade. Okay, so after installing the 19Ts, I was feeling pretty good about the car at this point, and I got a custom tune on the car because the 19Ts, I obviously needed a custom tune for that. And so naturally, I had to do a burnout. All right, so next upgrade was the fuel pump and fuel filter regulator. I needed more fuel for my throttle body injection. And here's where I basically did my first roller. After that, I really wanted a DCT swap, so I picked that up on Facebook for pretty cheap. I got it for about $1,800. Now, it ended up being a pretty decent deal, but honestly, it didn't have everything I needed. So like, it was still good, for the, even just for the transmission. For what it said it was, it actually didn't really work out to be that, of course. It was still a good deal. So I didn't start the DCT swap yet, but then I decided to get new suspension because my car was sagging a bit. And after that whole, bearing breaking off my strut on the front, I just decided it's time to get new suspension and finally have good fitment for my wheels. And then at some point, I really loved the GTS hood, so I had to get a carbon fiber GTS hood, you already know. So after the carbon hood, I had to go with another performance upgrade, and that was drag radials. These are a really good in between just a street tire and a full-on drag pack. I was spinning a little, obviously. Spin doesn't equal win, so had to start seeing if I could, do something a little more to get the tire to the ground. So those actually work really well. Again, really good in between. So after getting the drag radials, I took the car to the track, went through a couple runs, and my car started acting up, and I started getting high pressure codes. Ended up being the high pressure fuel pump, so later that night I actually just did a quick swap out, and with the one I had from the engine that I got, and was back and running. So at some point, I found out about the M4 style bumper for the E90. I honestly wasn't sure how it would turn out, so I just decided to send it. And honestly, I love the way it turned out. Decided to wrap the car, and I felt like it looked really, really good after wrapping it. So super happy with that. So here's where I start doing the DCT swap. First things first though, I did a MSD81 swap. This is a requirement for the DCT as a prerequisite, as well as a couple other modules like the yaw sensor. And at the same time, I was also troubleshooting the no sound issue, which is a break in the MOST loop. Basically, the MOST loop is a fiber optic loop that connects a bunch of modules together. And if one breaks, then essentially the MOST loop is broken, and that's why you get the no sound. So not knowing initially how the MOST loop worked, I thought I knew what the issue was. That's why there's a couple of the modules here, like the CCC. Only until I started researching the MOST loop and I got the MOST loop bypass tool was I able to figure out exactly what was wrong. It ended up being the SAT module, which is one of the pictures here. Learned a lot about that situation. This was me starting the car with the exhaust off. I liked the way it sounded. That was pretty much it. And also before completing the swap, I decided to take the DCT apart so I could inspect the clutches. Since I bought the DCT on Facebook, I had no idea of the actual condition of the DCT. So I just decided to take it apart and see the condition. It didn't look too bad, so I put it back together. From there, it was just the DCT swap process. So also while I was down there, I did the rear seal, and then I just decided I was gonna do the front seal as well. I don't have any pictures of the front seal, but the rear seal, I did actually had to do it twice because I messed it up the first time. Somehow the seal got like crunched, like a corner of it got crunched while I was installing it. So I ended up having to take it back out and do a new one. Then it was just a matter of the wiring in the DME box. Had to do a new drive shaft, a new diff, of course. Diff that actually came with it was actually correct. I just had to get a new drive shaft because the one that came with it didn't work and mine didn't work. Basically, I needed a manual or a DCT drive shaft, so I got that. And then I proceeded to do the wiring inside the car. I also decided to do the oil pan gasket again while I was down there. The whole engine's apart, might as well. And that was me doing a bunch of coding. And key moment right here was the MDCT shifter coming alive. Oh, that's one thing I forgot to mention was as part of this swap, I also did the M3 DCT shifter conversion. And of course the 8-bolt single mass flywheel. And with the whole swap complete, did a test drive and everything was looking good. So after all that, with the bumper swap and the DCT swap, it was time to complete the final look of the car with a new wrap. Also, I didn't specifically show it, but I did a rear M Sport bumper. Also did a shitty front lip, which I'm glad I did because it broke off 2 weeks later. And finally, shout out to my buddy Kevin for helping install the wrap. That would have taken me so long. So thanks, Kevin, if you ever see this. So that was the final look of the car. If you made it this far, thanks for sticking with the whole video. Super happy with how it turned out. However, I am moving on to the next phase. I'm rebuilding this car. So if you want to follow that journey, check me out in the next video because we're going to be starting on the next phase of the car. Super excited for how it's going to turn out and can't wait for y'all to see it.